The red recording light on the phone was still blinking when the Border Patrol agent slammed Rafael face first into the desert sand. And that's when Alejandro realized their social media celebrity coyote had been live streaming their arrest to thousands of TikTok followers who thought they were watching just another exciting border crossing documentary. What had started as the most modern and professional smuggling operation any of them had ever seen was ending with their faces broadcast to the internet, while El Lobo, the TikTok famous smuggler with 2.3 million followers, narrated their capture like a sports commentator describing a particularly thrilling game. The irony was devastating. They'd chosen El Lobo specifically because his viral videos made him seem so successful, so experienced, so impossible to catch. His TikTok account was filled with dramatic footage of successful crossings, testimonials from grateful migrants who'd reached their American dreams, and behind-the-scenes content that made human smuggling look like an extreme sport rather than a desperate gamble with death. But as the agents zip-tied their hands while El Lobo's phone continued recording their humiliation for viral entertainment, Alejandro understood that some social media stars built their fame on other people's failures, and their border crossing had just become content for an audience that preferred their immigration stories with satisfying endings where the good guys won. 2 months earlier, Alejandro had been just another unemployed 24-year-old in Santo Domingo, watching his engineering degree become worthless as the Dominican Republic's economy collapsed around him. His girlfriend Maria was pregnant, his mother needed medications the family couldn't afford, and his younger brother was being recruited by drug dealers who made it clear that joining wasn't optional. The mathematical equation was simple. Stay and watch everyone he loved suffer, or risk everything for a chance at American wages that could save his family. The search for a reliable coyote had led him to social media, where human smuggling had evolved into a digital marketplace with reviews, ratings, and promotional content that made illegal border crossing look like adventure tourism. El Lobo's TikTok account stood out immediately. Professionally produced videos showing successful crossings, satisfied customer testimonials, and educational content about border security that demonstrated extensive knowledge of patrol patterns and surveillance technology. El Lobo didn't hide his face like traditional smugglers. Instead, he built his brand on transparency, showing his followers exactly how professional smuggling operations worked. His videos had titles like How to Cross in 2023, The Real Methods, and Border Patrol Secrets They Don't Want You to Know. He explained route planning, timing strategies, even the psychology of dealing with arrest if caught. It was human smuggling as entertainment, education, and entrepreneurship combined. The testimonials were particularly convincing. Real people with real names and social media profiles, thanking El Lobo for helping them reach America safely. They talked about their new jobs, their reunited families, their gratitude for his professional service. The comment sections were filled with potential clients asking about prices and availability, treating border crossing like booking vacation packages rather than risking federal prosecution. Alejandro had contacted El Lobo through TikTok's direct messaging system, explaining his situation and asking about services. The response was immediate and professional. A detailed explanation of available packages, pricing structures, and success rates that read like a legitimate business proposal. El Lobo offered different service levels depending on budget, from basic guidance to full-service VIP treatment that included transportation, supplies, and guaranteed passage. The VIP package that Alejandro eventually booked cost $8,000. Money his family had raised by selling their small house and borrowing against future earnings that might never materialize. But El Lobo's success rate was advertised as 97%. His customer satisfaction ratings were excellent, and his social media presence suggested someone who took pride in professional service rather than just collecting money and abandoning clients. The other members of their group had found El Lobo through similar social media searches. Rafael, 19, was fleeing gang violence in Honduras that had already claimed his father and older brother. Carlos, 22, was from Guatemala where drought had destroyed his family's farm and left him with nothing but debt. Maria, 26, was escaping domestic violence in El Salvador that police refused to investigate. All had been drawn to El Lobo's professional image and social media presence. The meeting point in Tijuana looked exactly like El Lobo's TikTok videos had shown, a professional operation with proper equipment, experienced guides, and the kind of organization that suggested serious investment in successful outcomes. El Lobo himself was charismatic and confident, treating them like valued clients rather than desperate people. He explained the route in detail, showed them satellite images of crossing points, even provided weather forecasts that would affect their journey. The documentary aspect began immediately. El Lobo explained that he filmed his operations for educational purposes, to show the reality of modern migration and build awareness of the challenges facing people forced to leave their countries. The footage would be edited to protect their identities, he assured them, but documenting the process was important for advocacy and education. Everyone consented, grateful to work with someone who treated migration as a human rights issue rather than pure criminality. The equipment El Lobo provided was impressive: GPS devices, satellite communicators, professional camping gear, even night vision equipment that would help them avoid detection. Everything was branded with his social media logos, turning their border crossing into a marketing opportunity that would demonstrate his operations professionalism to potential future clients. The first night of their journey was filmed extensively, with El Lobo providing commentary about navigation techniques, security awareness, and survival strategies. He interviewed each member of the group about their reasons for crossing, their hopes for America, their gratitude for his professional service. The content felt like a combination of adventure documentary and humanitarian advocacy, making their illegal activity seem heroic rather than criminal. The route El Lobo chose avoided traditional crossing points, instead using a sophisticated path through terrain that his research had identified as having minimal border patrol presence. He explained his methodology to the camera, describing how he analyzed patrol patterns, studied surveillance technology, and identified gaps in enforcement coverage. It was human smuggling as applied science, with each decision backed by data and analysis. For 2 days, everything proceeded exactly as El Lobo had promised. They made steady progress through challenging terrain, avoided detection by security forces, and maintained the pace needed to reach their pickup point on schedule. El Lobo's live streams during rest periods showed confident progress reports to his TikTok audience, building suspense about whether they'd successfully complete another crossing that would add to his impressive success rate. The filming continued throughout their journey, with El Lobo maintaining constant documentation of their progress. He explained his techniques to his online audience, provided educational content about survival in harsh terrain, and interviewed his client about their experience with his professional service. Everything was designed to build his brand while advocating for immigrant rights and demonstrating the humanity of people forced into dangerous crossings. But something changed on the third night. El Lobo's confidence began to seem forced, his route choices more erratic, his commentary more focused on creating dramatic content than ensuring successful crossing. When they encountered unexpected Border Patrol activity in an area he claimed was secure, his response was to continue filming rather than prioritizing their safety. The cat-and-mouse game of Border Patrol that followed was broadcast live to El Lobo's TikTok audience, who watched in real time as the group tried to evade capture while their guide provided running commentary, like a sports broadcaster describing an exciting game. Alejandro began to understand that their successful crossing was less important to El Lobo than creating engaging content that would drive views and build his social media presence. When they were finally cornered in an arroyo that offered no escape routes, El Lobo's first concern was adjusting his camera angle to capture the most dramatic footage of their arrest. He continued live streaming even as Border Patrol agents shouted commands, providing commentary about enforcement tactics while Rafael, Carlos, Maria, and Alejandro faced the destruction of their American dreams. The arrest was professionally filmed and immediately uploaded to El Lobo's TikTok account with a title that turned their tragedy into entertainment. Caught by Border Patrol, you won't believe what happened next. The thumbnail showed their faces during the moment of capture, and within hours the video had hundreds of thousands of views from an audience that treated their suffering as content to be consumed and shared. El Lobo's post-arrest livestream was the most revealing content he'd ever produced. Speaking to his phone while being processed by Border Patrol, he explained to his audience that not every crossing could be successful, that failed attempts were part of the business, and that documenting these failures was important for showing the reality of border enforcement. His followers' comments praised him for his transparency and authenticity in showing both successes and failures. The investigation that followed their arrest revealed the full scope of El Lobo's social media strategy. Immigration authorities discovered that he'd been deliberately leading some groups into areas with heavy Border Patrol presence, creating dramatic content by filming arrests and deportations that he then used to build his online brand. Failed crossings generated more engagement than successful ones, making other people's suffering more valuable than their success. Rafael, Carlos, Maria, and Alejandro learned during their detention that they'd been selected specifically because their demographics and stories would create compelling content for El Lobo's audience. Young, attractive, sympathetic migrants with heartbreaking backstories were perfect for viral videos that would generate the engagement metrics that social media algorithms rewarded with increased visibility and monetization opportunities. The legal proceedings were complicated by the extensive video evidence that El Lobo had created of their illegal border crossing. Every moment of their journey had been documented and uploaded to social media platforms where millions of viewers had watched their attempt to reach America. Their faces were now permanently associated with illegal immigration in content that would never be deleted from the internet. El Lobo faced charges for human smuggling, but his social media presence had also made him a celebrity in certain circles. Immigration hardliners praised him for documenting illegal border crossings and providing evidence that supported enforcement efforts. His audience continued growing even as he faced federal prosecution, with followers treating him as a martyr for border security or immigrant rights depending on their political perspective. The TikTok videos of their arrest became evidence in their deportation proceedings, but they also generated sympathy from advocacy groups who saw them as victims of both failed immigration policies and social media exploitation. Their suffering had been monetized for entertainment, their desperation transformed into content that generated revenue for someone who promised to help them reach safety. Maria discovered during detention that she'd suffered a miscarriage during the stress of their failed crossing, losing the child she'd hoped to raise in America. The medical emergency hadn't been included in El Lobo's videos because pregnancy complications didn't fit the adventure documentary narrative he was creating for his audience. Her physical and emotional trauma was edited out of content that portrayed border crossing as exciting rather than devastating. The deportation proceedings that followed were swift and merciless. Their extensive documentation by El Lobo made denial impossible, and their faces were too recognizable from viral videos to allow them to disappear into immigration limbo. They were returned to their countries of origin with criminal records that would permanently bar future legal immigration attempts, carrying the additional shame of having their failures broadcast to millions of strangers. Rafael returned to Honduras, where gang members recognized him from El Lobo's videos and targeted him for the attention his arrest had brought to migrant routes. His viral fame made him a liability to criminal organizations that preferred operating in shadows rather than social media spotlights. The publicity that El Lobo had generated for his brand had also painted targets on the backs of his former clients. Carlos discovered that his family's farm in Guatemala had been sold while he was in detention, the buyers using his viral arrest as evidence that he'd never returned to claim the property. El Lobo's documentation of his crossing had been used against him in civil proceedings that stripped his family of their last assets. His social media fame had followed him home, destroying opportunities that might have remained if his failure had been anonymous. Alejandro found work in Santo Domingo, but employers recognized him from the viral videos and worried about the immigration attention his presence might bring to their businesses. His engineering degree remained worthless. But now he also carried the burden of being a recognizable failed border crosser whose face was permanently associated with illegal immigration and content that would circulate forever. The psychological impact of their viral exposure was worse than the legal consequences. They'd trusted El Lobo with their lives and dreams, only to discover that their suffering was just content for his social media empire. Their most vulnerable moments had been broadcast for entertainment, their desperation monetized for an audience that consumed their pain without consequence. El Lobo's TikTok account continued operating even after his arrest, with associates managing content that included updates on his legal case and behind-the-scenes footage from previous operations. His brand had become bigger than any individual crossing, with a business model that treated human suffering as renewable content that could be harvested and distributed to audiences hungry for immigration drama. The social media platforms that hosted El Lobo's content faced criticism for allowing human smuggling to be broadcast and monetized, but their response was limited to adding warning labels rather than removing videos that documented criminal activity. The engagement generated by immigration content was too valuable to platform revenue for them to take stronger action against creators who built audiences by exploiting human desperation. Other smugglers began copying El Lobo's social media strategy, creating TikTok accounts that documented their operations and built brands around their criminal enterprises. The gamification of human smuggling attracted new audiences who treated border crossing like entertainment rather than life-or-death struggles faced by desperate people with no other options. The educational content that El Lobo had claimed to be creating was revealed to be misinformation designed to attract clients rather than provide accurate information about crossing dangers. His success rate had been inflated, his testimonials fabricated, and his expertise exaggerated for audiences who preferred dramatic narratives to boring facts about immigration realities. Immigration advocates struggled to respond to the social media phenomenon that El Lobo had created. His content had raised awareness of migration issues, but in ways that sensationalized suffering and turned human tragedy into viral entertainment. The platform he'd built was simultaneously helpful and harmful, educational and exploitative, depending on how viewers interpreted content that treated real people's desperation as performance art. The technology that had made El Lobo's operation possible continued evolving, with new smugglers using emerging platforms to build audiences and attract clients. Live streaming, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence were being incorporated into human smuggling operations that treated illegal border crossing as content creation opportunities rather than humanitarian crises, requiring compassionate responses. Years later, Alejandro still received notifications when someone tagged him in comments on El Lobo's old videos, reminders that his failed border crossing remained entertainment for audiences who'd move on to consuming other people's suffering. His face was permanently part of internet culture, a symbol of failed immigration that would be referenced and remixed by content creators who'd never faced the desperation that drove people to trust social media celebrities with their lives. The red recording light that had captured their arrest continued blinking in Alejandro's memory, a reminder that in the age of social media, even the most private moments of desperation could become public entertainment for audiences who treated human suffering as content to be consumed, shared, and monetized by creators who understood that failure often generated more engagement than success. El Lobo's TikTok empire had been built on the broken dreams of people like Rafael, Carlos, Maria, and Alejandro, who believed that social media fame translated to professional competence, and that viral success meant they could trust their lives to someone who treated their desperation as raw material for content creation. Their arrests have been just another episode in a series that would continue as long as audiences remained hungry for immigration drama, and creators were willing to exploit human suffering for views. The live stream of their capture remained available on multiple platforms, a permanent record of the moment when social media celebrity culture intersected with human smuggling to create entertainment from the destruction of dreams that had motivated four people to risk everything for chances that a TikTok star had turned into content for millions of strangers who would never face similar choices or understand the desperation that made trusting a social media influencer with your life seem like a reasonable gamble.